Note, this has not been directly addressed, nor has it been entertained by any United States government entity in a public forum. What has gone from the drawing board to the reality is this: the use of neural interfacing and physiological interfacing through the idea of remote-controlled small-scale systems to create a nanoswarm of biopenetrable materials that you cannot see, that can penetrate all but the most robust biochemical filters, that are able to integrate themselves through a variety of membranes, mucous membranes, and wherever, mouth, nose, ears, eyes, and they can be done in such a level that their presence is almost impossible to detect, and as such the attribution becomes exceedingly difficult to demonstrate. The idea here is to read and write into the brain function in real time, remotely.
These nanobots, these blood cell-sized devices, will be going in our bodies. We'll have some go inside our brains through the capillaries, non-invasively. They'll be interacting with our biological neurons. They'll put our brains on the internet, and they'll also enable us to enter a virtual reality environment from within the nervous system.
So, the guy who's considered sort of the guru or godfather of the transhumanism movement is Ray Kurzweil. And he's one of the heads of engineering at Google. And so everything comes down to what they view as the singularity. And the singularity basically refers to that point in time in history where we have created this global computer that sees all, sees everything, and where the humans evolved to create a collective mind.
We're all collectively programming the AI, and Google plus all the humans that connect to it are one giant cybernetic collective, where we're all sort of plugged in as like nodes on the network, like leaves on a big tree.
A human mass-machine interface to be able to predict the future and then control the future. That's in the founding documents of Google.
Your personality, your memories, who you are, the essence of your soul, would be incorporated in this disk as pure information.
And it was in Wired magazine 4 years ago, they actually released the, quote, classified Google documents admitting that when they were getting CIA funding and NSA funding, they're saying, we already have search engines. This is NSA technology. They said, no, we're going to get humans to interface with it, with their hopes, their dreams, all their actions, dial it into all the other machines and computers, and have a lifetime model of the world hooked into GPS, everything, the Internet of Things, to then be able to predict the future and then be able to control the future.
And the computer and both the computer and internet were entirely projects of the CIA. So the Cybernetics group really that basically dictated the direction for this project was intertwined with the CIA. And what's interesting is out of the Cybernetics group came two fundamental projects. So one was the creation of personal computer and the other one was MKUltra. So basically, from the beginning, it's been this plan to create not only artificial intelligence, but a global computer that sees all, sees everything, for them to become gods.
The kinds of technology that we and Google are working on are very important for resolving some of the big problems that are going to face humanity over the next few years. So think back to that decision that you made and think about maybe having made a different one. So just ask yourself the question, let's say you had made that other decision. Is that person that did that other thing, how real are they? So you have a memory of this thing that you did, and probably everybody involved in that will remember it the same way. And just imagine if you made a different decision, what does that mean? So physics, in our usual sense of the word, balls rolling down the hills and so on, says that other thing is a path not taken. It never happened. It's not real except as some kind of supposition in your brain. But quantum physics, which is somehow more fundamental than this notion that we hold, and is being very successful in explaining the world, says something very different. It opens up the possibility that all of those paths not taken are just as real as the one that you remember. And they exist in some sense. They're real, just like what you remember. And maybe, if our technology advances sufficiently far, we can not only know that, but we can use those other resources to influence the behavior of machines that we make. So quantum computing, in one way of looking at things, is nothing less than going in and touching the deepest fabric of space-time, and with our brains and our technology and our tools, sticking our fingers in the guts of reality and just kneading the hell out of it, and making it do what we want. To use these different parallel possibilities to our computational benefit.
Hyperreality is an inability of consciousness to distinguish reality from a simulation of reality. What is real and what is fiction are blended together so that there is no clear distinction between where one ends and the other begins. It allows the co-mingling of physical reality with virtual reality and human intelligence with artificial intelligence. Targeted individuals find themselves thrust into this new reality against their will and without their permission. They are non-consensual test subjects for a mind control weapons platform that is currently being rolled out throughout the world.
It is called the Sentient World Simulation. The program's aim, according to its creator, is to be a continuously running, continually updated mirror model of the entire planet, complete with billions of nodes representing every person on the Earth.
The mirror world doesn't yet fully exist, but it is coming. Someday soon, every place and thing in the real world, every street, lamppost, building and room, will have its full-size digital twin in the mirror world.
And this was a white paper put out by Purdue University in 2006, and the Sentient World Simulation, SWS, went live in 2007, which represents every person on the planet within this computer matrix as a node, and every node is given an avatar, an identifier. And that is real-time, 24/7 monitoring of every person on the planet. This is primarily, but not exclusively, facilitated by the adiabatic quantum computers produced by D-Wave Corporation.
For the mirror world to come fully online, we don't just need everything to have a digital twin. We also need to build a 3D model of physical reality in which to place those twins.
So what our brains seem to do is build a very, very good compressed representation of the world. Call it a model. So just like if I have a building and there's like a blueprint or a scale model of the building, imagine I have the whole world and all of its concepts, and I shrink it down into this weird compressed representation so that it fits inside my brain.
In the mirror world, everything will have a paired twin. NASA engineers pioneered this concept in the 1960s. By keeping a duplicate of any machine they sent into space, they could troubleshoot a malfunctioning component while its counterpart was thousands of miles away. These twins evolved into computer simulations, digital twins.
At the time of initial reports on the program, there were only 62 country-level simulations being run by the US Department of Defense. These simulations grouped humans into composites, with 100 individuals acting as a single node. But already at that time, the US Army had used the systems to create a 1-to-1 level simulation of potential Army recruits.
It's the stuff of a Hollywood movie, but a group of veterans has filed a lawsuit against the CIA and U.S. Army claiming that the government planted remote-control devices in their brains. The claims relate to a government program at the U.S. Army's Edgewood Arsenal in Maryland.
The ultimate aim would be to archive enough data on each individual to be able to make a computer model of everyone on the planet.
We have to embody all our data and all our knowledge into a working model. It's like a Noah's Ark, it's like an archive.
It's a very important thing that we create models of the world inside our heads, and everything you think, everything, from your feeling of self to the feeling that you may have a soul or a maker, to your preference for cilantro or not, all of those things live inside a place which is dark and small and never sees the outside world. When we look through our eyes, there are photons hitting the outside of our face. They don't actually make it into the part that thinks. The part that thinks is looking at something else. It's looking at some kind of weird compressed signal.
The brain creates, builds a version of the universe and projects this version of the universe like a bubble all around us. If you zoom in onto the surface of the neocortex, you discover that it's made up of little modules, G5 processors like in a computer, but there's about 1 million of them. They were so successful in evolution that what we did was to duplicate them over and over and add more and more of them to the brain until we ran out of space in the skull and the brain started to fold in on itself. And that's why the neocortex is so highly convoluted. We were just packing in columns so that we'd have more neocortical columns to perform more complex functions. So you can think of the neocortex actually as a massive grand piano, million-key grand piano. Each of these neocortical columns would produce a note. You stimulate it, it produces a symphony. But it's not just a symphony of perception. It's a symphony of your universe, your reality. So the holy grail for neuroscience is really to understand the design of the neocortical column. And it's not just for neuroscience, it's perhaps to understand perception, to understand reality.
The computer simulation acts as a technological afterlife. One negative aspect to this is that because you are directly tethered to your digital twin, you can be controlled through the simulation. This is how targeted individuals are manipulated.
By the way, I could build, I think, a soul. Here's how I would do it. I copy you exactly into a digital environment. Everything about you. Imagine that was possible. It probably is. So if I copy you into a machine, that copy process has all of the properties we were talking about as being a soul. First of all, it's immaterial, because copying, that's not a thing, it's a process. It's immortal, it's just like you. You can put it in any environment you want, heaven, hell, make a simulation.
So let's switch it on, but to do it, what you have to do is you have to make this come alive. We make it come alive with equations, a lot of mathematics. And in fact, the equations that make neurons into electrical generators were discovered by 2 Cambridge Nobel laureates. So we have the mathematics to make neurons come alive. We also have the mathematics to describe how neurons collect information and how they create a little lightning bolt to communicate with each other. And when they get to the synapse, what they do is they effectively, literally shock the synapse. It's like electrical shock that releases the chemicals from these synapses. And we've got the mathematics to describe this process, so we can describe the communication between the neurons. So there literally are only a handful of equations that you need to simulate the activity of the neocortex. But what you do need is a very big computer.
What they're going to do is apply this machine to an area that I think is fundamentally important. It's the crux of our future as humans. And that's, can we build machines like us?
The adiabatic quantum computer is linked to 7 billion human brains. It is now, in its own language of cryptology, able to function independent of any oversight throughout the world with its own form of communication, its own form of code. And it is able to link everyone on the planet at this point.
We can model every single atom, every single molecule with a three-dimensional structure in every single brain.
We can load up all the neurons, each one onto its processor, and fire it up and see what happens. Take the magic carpet for a ride. Here we activate it, and this gives the first glimpse of what is happening in your brain when there's a stimulation. It's the first view. Now, when you look at that the first time, you think, my God, how is reality coming out of that? But in fact, you can start, even though we haven't trained this neocortical column to create a specific reality, but we can ask, where is the rose? We can ask, where is it inside? If we stimulate it with a picture, where is it inside the neocortex? Ultimately, it's got to be there if we stimulated it with it. So the way that we can look at that is to ignore the neurons, ignore the synapses, and look just at the raw electrical activity, because that's what it's creating. It's creating electrical patterns. So when we did this, we indeed, for the first time, saw these ghostly-like structures, electrical objects appearing within the neocortical column. And it's these electrical objects that are holding all the information about whatever stimulated it. And then when we zoomed into this, it's like a veritable universe. So the next step is just to take these brain coordinates and to project them into perceptual space. And if you do that, you would be able to step inside the reality that is created by this machine.
This isn't real. What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain.
If we have algorithms that stimulate the right things and give it the right data, they could reprogram you in a way without you even knowing it. We call it hallucinating, right? But these would be controlled hallucinations run by algorithms. So you think you're in control of your own will, but it's actually some evil AI or evil people controlling everything we do, and we're more like zombies. We think we're free, and we're not actually free.
This is why you are receiving voice-to-skull transmissions. This is why you are being attacked with microwave and frequency weapons. You are unfortunately being used by the national security state, the military-industrial intelligence complex of this country, for the purposes of researching and developing highly sophisticated state-of-the-art technology that is primarily concerned with the human mind and how it operates, how to hack it, and how to harness its computing power to inform AI technology in the future and inform the computer systems of our military intelligence, and major corporations in this country.
Your mind is plugged into the Hive mind. You're plugged into an augmented reality. You are plugged into a quantum computer-driven system. You are plugged in with the AI that is an outgrowth of quantum computing. At the highest artificial generative level, quantum computers run augmented reality.
So if you have the opportunity to stand next to one of these machines, it is an awe-inspiring thing, at least for me. It feels like an altar to an alien god. They really are impressive machines.